From the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Today, the NFL, they have approved the 17 regular season game schedule. The Broncos will host the Detroit Lions as part of this. So there's going to be some alternating here. We can get into the nuts and bolts of it, but in the end, the AFC West has an opportunity. They're going to be hosting those NFC North teams this year. AFC's hosting all teams, but the AFC West in this case hosting the NFC North. And the Broncos are going to be hosting the Lions. And as it turns out, Ben, the Broncos are tied for the fifth easiest strength of schedule. And you know what? I mean, considering that they were the second most difficult last year, I think you take any break you can possibly get at this point.
Well, the win over the Raiders 2 seasons ago at the end of the season took the Broncos and vaulted them to second in the division, and that's what caused that schedule to be that much more difficult. This coming season, they're going to get a lot easier schedule. I think I think that benefits a young team that's still kind of growing and learning, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And, you know, hey, Broncos catch some breaks. Who knows?
Well, but that's the point. Like, in the end, you could only play the teams that are on your schedule and where
it's not college football, so their strength schedule doesn't actually matter. But
it doesn't, but at the same time for the Broncos, and this is more about the winning percentage, like it's a 471 winning percentage from the teams in the previous year. But again, there's so much turnover in the NFL at some level that doesn't really matter. But in the perspective for the Broncos, if it does help, I mean, at this point, anything that helps them, because there did feel at times, I mean, you got off right off the bat last year. You had the Tennessee Titans, you had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, you had good teams right off the bat of the season. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, we're talking about playoff teams up and down for a team that was still trying to figure things out on the fly without preseason games or really a full offseason. It was very evident that the offense was still figuring things out. And then once they lost Cortland Sutton and Drew Lock for a time, it was a huge detriment for what they were able to accomplish. And they put themselves in a hole. It didn't really matter at that point what they did the rest of the season. They weren't going to make the playoffs. And everything else was more about just learning what you had on the field. And they started to show improvement as the season wore on. And then there were pockets where the schedule gets a little lighter, and that's for every single team. But boy, the Broncos had a tough start to the season. It would be nice if the schedule makers gave them a little bit of help this time around. And again, who knows if they even care about that sort of thing. The one benefit, though, the Broncos will get the preseason games this year. Yeah. And that should help at least put some of that chemistry on the field, give them an opportunity to work together before the actual season starts. Because what it felt like last year, correct me if I'm wrong, it felt like the Broncos were kind of getting their preseason work done during the regular season. Yeah, it absolutely did. And you can tell. You go back and look at last season. You look at not just the Broncos. Look at teams that had a brand new offensive coordinator, and look at how they fared through their first 4 games. Tampa Bay Bucks with Arians and and Brady. Yep, it didn't look very good. Took them a while to get going. Took the Broncos a while to get going. Now they had a new quarterback, but you get the idea. Anybody who had a new quarterback or new OC, those teams tended to struggle early on. They really did. And so, I think that's something that not a lot of people take into consideration when they talk about Locke, whether you believe Locke's a guy or not. It's, it's important to put things in honest context, and that's one of those things that people forget about. Yeah, absolutely. Now, one thing that's going to help the Broncos one way or the other is this new announcement today. The NFL informed clubs they can begin phase 1 of OTAs on April 19th. So remember, last year you didn't get any of that. You didn't get the phase 1. Really, you didn't get any OTAs at all. Mm-hmm. But they are going to be an opportunity. The players are going to be allowed to work at the facility in small groups. And the only thing that's a little bit negative here is that the teams with new coaching staffs aren't going to get the extra week or so of work with their teams. Because it used to be basically, and this will probably come back next year, if you have a new coaching staff that you're allowed, you get an extra couple weeks. But in this case now, everybody's starting around April 19th with phase 1. Right. I don't think, there's going to be a while before there's any scenario that's like the Broncos had to deal with when Vic Fangio got hired, because they get the 2 extra weeks and they had the Hall of Fame game, so they got an additional 10 days. So they wound up with almost an extra month of training camp, and those players were so tired by the time the season hit. They were beat up and worn out, and they were genuinely tired, and there was some complaints, about that. So I think it'll be a long time before you see a situation like that again. Also here, just one last thing, that they have collaborated through the COVID-19 pandemic, the NFL and NFLPA. There are going to be some provisions, and the in-person workouts, like this isn't a done deal that you're going to have the full slate because the NFLPA is on the back end of this thing right now trying to make more of it virtual, if possible.
Right, yeah. And they, before the vaccines and everything else, they're going to play it as safe as possible. Once everybody gets vaccinated, it's going to change things more or less towards the normal. And
there was some news on a quarterback in Mitchell Trubisky that came out last couple of days. Now, if you've been listening to the show for any length of time, we told you that the Broncos weren't interested. We told you
I also tweeted it yesterday. But,
but you mentioned on the air around the time of free agency, the Broncos weren't going to go after
Chicago quarterback.
Yeah, they were not going to go after Mitch Trubisky.
Right. And in the absence of a quarterback, and there's this great line in the movie Sorkin wrote, what was it, The American President?
Yes.
In the absence of leadership, people will turn to anything. When they get thirsty enough, they'll drink the sand.
It's a great line.
It is. It's a great line. And that's what this is. In the absence of having clarity and surety at something, you'll get all these whack jobs out there that'll tell you all kinds of things instead of, what's actually happening. And it's always funny to kind of eyeball Twitter and see these self-proclaimed insiders that just be chilling though for real and make up all this stuff like they know anything about anything at all. They don't. And, that's what happens. People believe it, though, because they're so desperate for information that they'll actually believe these clowns. The conversation, and I'll tell you this firsthand, someone who was in the room for the conversation, is they called Trubisky's agency and said, hey, what's Mitch looking for? And they threw out a number, and the Broncos said, okay, we will take that under advisement.
Coming up next on Broncos Country Tonight, Hall of Famer Steve Atwater on the program. We're talking NFL draft. We're talking quarterbacks. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Here are Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Steve, it's good to have you on the program. Let's talk about this 17-game schedule. It's been mixed results from players. I don't know. Put yourself in the position of the players. You obviously were one. What would you think? What would you say if the league said you got one more game you have to play in the regular season?
Well, I know a lot of the guys, they want to get paid more money for it. It's like, hey, there could be more revenue coming in because it's a regular season game. I don't know if that's true or not, but, I understand that point of view, but, at the same time, I think everyone kind of knew this was coming. And it will give the teams, an opportunity to see more actual games that count than, the preseason games, and where, especially the last two, the veterans barely played any, well, they ain't very much any of them now. It was coming. I'm looking forward to seeing how it's going to play out. And I think it's going to be good. I think everybody will embrace it eventually. It's going to be kind of difficult in the beginning to, fathom playing 17 games. But hey, there have been changes made before, and they'll adapt, and they'll be good to go.
Can you just tell me quickly, as far as from a player's perspective, how are you usually feeling by week 15, week 16 into week 17?
Depends on who your coach is.
Okay.
Some coaches, and I don't think very many coaches nowadays, really, beat their guys up in practice. You can't do it anyway. But if a team is banged up, certainly, when you get to game, 12, 13, 14, you're not looking forward to playing 17 games. But if you stay relatively healthy, if you've sold up a playoff spot early and you can rest some guys, then you're like, hey, you play how many games you want to. But if you're struggling, still trying to get in, and that that last game counts, hey, everybody's going to have to play, and you got to expend a lot more energy. So, hey, I just look at it like just about anything else, man. It's something that happens. It's written into the law now. So, what can anybody do about it? But just discuss it, and and I'm happy discussing it. But it's not going to change. It's done now. It's a done deal.
Yeah, it is, and it's kind of a problem, I think, for people that make over $4.5 million in base salary over the course of the year, because the 17th game, by the rules of the CBA, is actually capped at $250,000. So anybody who makes more than $4.5 million a year in base salary is actually getting gypped on money out of that game. Is that something that would upset you?
Nah, not really. Come on, man. You making $4.5 million, man. You know, like, oh man, I'm gonna get $250,000 this week.
So, Steve, there's some trades in front of the Broncos in the NFL draft. I wanted to get your thoughts on what the strategy now. And we're going to talk about some quarterbacks here in a minute because you did some scouting on them. But the Broncos sitting at 9. The Dolphins traded back, then they traded back up. But more than anything, the 49ers have taken that third spot, and they are intent on taking a quarterback. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3 no matter what at quarterback, with the intention potentially of 4, maybe even 5. If the Broncos... I mean, I guess I'll just straight up ask you, what would you like to see them do there?
Oh, man, it's tough because we don't know if they're planning on drafting a quarterback this year. Now, obviously, yeah, we'd love for them to get into the mix there. And, you know, even if, you know, Drew Lock ends up winning the quarterback, you know, winning the starting spot, we'll still have 2 great quarterbacks on the team. And Ryan, you always said, hey, you can't have enough good quarterbacks. So, but if they do decide to go that route, you know, I don't know if you can wait till 9 now, because you know, you may have to trade up, or if not, I think everybody's going to be gone by 10. I think all 5 of the guys who they're predicting to go, Mac Jones included, they're going to be going in the top 10. That's my personal opinion.
Brian, had you look at some of the quarterbacks, I think it was Lance Fields and Mac Jones. I wanted to ask you a couple of things, because one of the things I noticed about Fields that really bothered me was the fact that his blitz diagnosis was rather poor, to be honest with you. Anytime you go back and look at the Indiana tape, anytime that they anytime they showed pressure from the boundary and then dropped and brought the pressure from the field side, he didn't know what to do, and he would just sit there and just eat sacks. Like, anytime the pressure came from a side he didn't expect, he'd just sit there and hang on to it and eat a sack. And I know that's something that could be coached out, but it was just something that to me looked rather glaring for a guy who, you know, kind of has the tools and is viewed as a top-tier prospect.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of saw, you know, the similar thing with Dwayne Haskins. You know, he had a great college career, you know, but when he got with the Washington football team, he wasn't able to play at that same level. Now, you know, we don't know if that will happen with Justin Fields. Justin Fields seems like I don't know. He just seems like he's a little bit more into it at this stage of the process than Dwayne Haskins was. And, you know, I'm hoping that he'll be able to get with a good football team who's going to be able to help teach him and bring him along to be a great quarterback. But yeah, I'm with you. You know, he definitely has some areas that he needs to improve in. Now, you know, him running that 4-4, that didn't hurt him. You know, especially, you know, for teams that, you know, try to like to run that run and shoot, they're going to have him being mobile, and that. Well, I think any team would probably do that with him. But I think he's got a bright future ahead. He's got a nice arm, but yeah, he's got to get better in his recognition of, you know, different blitzes and, you know, where everybody's coming on the field, and, you know, not taking those sacks. I think I like Mac Jones a little bit better than Trey Lance. You know, although Trey Lance is you know, a lot more mobile. You know, I thought Mac Jones, with his accuracy, nobody talks about the fact that this guy broke the records, man. He broke a ton of records last year.
Coming up next on Broncos Country Tonight, we're going to talk quarterbacks. We're going to get to Ben's big board. Who's in his top 10? Who could the Broncos be targeting? We'll get to it next.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Let's get to Ben's big board. We're talking quarterbacks tonight.
Let's get to number 10.
Number 10 on Ben's big board. Let's go after it.
Shane Buechele, SMU. You know, he's. I think he's kind of one of those grab bag right there at 10. You know, kind of guys. 6'1", 207, a little on the small side, but you know, he throws with a little bit of anticipation. I think that he's a guy that if you need a career backup type guy, he's your guy. He reminds you of Case Keenum, honestly. Doesn't have elite arm strength, not the best size, just kind of makes throws and, you know, can get you by at a pinch. Number 9, Davis Mills out of Stanford.
I was hoping he'd be a little higher.
I know our guy Tim Jenkins, liked him, but he's a high variance quarterback. And the more I go back and watch this guy, the more he reminds me of this kid out of Idaho a few years ago, Nathan Stanley. He's got the arm, and every once in a while he's going to make a throw that says, "Oh my goodness, what are you doing?" And then he's going to make a throw that says, "Oh my goodness, what are you doing?" Mm-hmm. And he's just that guy that's frustrating. You could find a guy that could maybe make him more consistent. That's good. He's got good velocity, good touch. He's just not really. I didn't particularly care for the way he navigated the pocket. He's kind of a tree back there, and it's not going to work. That's not going to work in the NFL.
Bit of an incomplete, I think, on his college career there at Stanford. Had 3,468 passing yards, 18 touchdowns. But there were some inconsistencies there. I mean, he would be project. And that like, we're in this range. Mm-hmm. We're talking project guys you bring in on day 3, right. Give yourself an opportunity to put them in their quarterback room and just see if they flourish. And if they do, they do. They don't. It's not a big investment as far as draft capital goes. I happen to like Davis Mills a little bit more, but I understand where you and Tim are coming from.
Yeah. Next is Kyle Trask out of Florida. Not a big fan of his. 6'4", 239. He's got great size. But his arm is kind of average, and he's just kind of a statue back there in the pocket. If you're looking for a comparison there, maybe Nick Foles is probably your comparison.
The thing about Kyle Trask is, again, I think you nailed it on the head. He's just not an elite player. Doesn't have the mobility, the requisite mobility that a lot of teams are looking for. If you're taking a flyer on him, it is a career backup kind of deal. Mm-hmm. More likely. I mean, I'm not trying to interrupt you. I'm just
No. That's 10-9-8. So this would be 7 here, correct?
Yep.
I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me. Kellen Mond out of Texas A&M, 6'2", 217. He's got 9.25-inch hands. He's kind of an interesting guy because with Jimbo Fisher quarterbacks, you're always wondering if they're maxed out. He gets the most out of quarterbacks. They get onto the NFL and they really just don't grow. The next guy at number 6, Jamie Newman out of Wake Forest, 6'3", 235, 10-inch hands. You get the big mitts. You got to love it. So he's got the dual threat ability. He's just under. He's just a guy that's. His 40 time isn't the greatest in the world, but he does have the dual threat ability, and you kind of saw that a little bit. So there's, with the opt-out and all that kind of stuff, there's not a lot of tape on him. And then you go back and you look at the Wake Forest offense, the claw offense, as it were, with Dave Clawson. It's extremely quarterback friendly. A lot of hyper tempo type stuff, RPO, play action type stuff.
Yep. You wonder though if you had a chance to play at Georgia, what his stock would look like.
And I'm the same way. He's got a great deep ball. And to me, he's got the things you can't teach. So if you got a great quarterback developer, that's a guy.
All right, top 5.
Yeah, we're into the top 5. I think everybody knows who the top 5 names are. It really just kind of boils down to the order that you have them in. At number 5, I've got McCorkle Jones, 6'3", 217, 9.75-inch hands. He's basically Andy Dalton, but less athletic. And I don't know if I had a comparison for Jamie Newman, but I kind of went David Garrard a little bit. Anybody? That kind of reminds you, that thick guy. Took a little while to develop, anyway. Jones throws with anticipation and touch, but the problem is he's elevated by the talent around him. He had track star receivers, and I think he's good. I just don't think he's great. And so I think he's a guy who can absolutely start at the NFL level.
Number 4.
Sorry, I'm trying to scroll up and get all my notes here. There we go. Whoop. There we go. Justin Fields. I know a lot of people have him a lot higher than that. You look at the raw athleticism, the tools. I think that there are things to like. But in my estimation, the one thing that I noticed, and I mentioned it with Steve when we were talking to him, there are a couple of things about his game that really bother me. And that's not to say you can't coach them out of him. But there are some things that bother me. He holds the ball too long. He's looking for the deep shot, and you know how young guys are with that yellow ball. We've seen it with Drew Lock. You're looking for the deep ball instead of taking what's underneath. He just does not look for the underneath. He's looking for extend the play, go deep. That's what he's looking for.
All right, let's get to your top 3 here. Number 3.
Number 3, Trey Lance.
Yeah, you've been big on Trey Lance. I'm not quite where our guy Tim Jenkins is on him, where he's like barely like a top 7 quarterback.
I'm not even sure how this guy knows how to throw a football.
But I absolutely, this is that whole upside conversation. Mm-hmm. He's 19 years old. This is that whole upside conversation. Tell me why you have Trey Lance number 3.
Well, 6'4", 227, and he reminds me of, it's the best comp I've seen out there, Steve McNair. That's what he reminds me of, Eric McNair, man. He's a raw guy. He's a raw guy. The ball comes out of his hand with sizzle. And he makes these ridiculous rainbow bucket throws I hadn't seen since Russ was doing it. Because Russ drops that ball in the bucket, the deep, deep rainbow throw. Both those two guys pull it off. He's like tall Russ. He's like if Russ was 6'4", that's who he'd be.
All right. Anything else on Trey? And you want to get to your top two? Your top two
I don't
obvious?
really. Yeah, we just get into the top two.
Okay.
Number 2 is Trevor Lawrence.
Ooh, I wondered.
It's Trevor Lawrence.
I like it.
Hype's real on the kid, but there's some things not to like. He's incredibly skinny, 6'5", and some change, almost 6'6", 213. That's scrawny.
Yeah, he's a string bean.
That is scrawny, and you're going to get hit every play in the NFL. It's not like Clemson. You're going to get hit in every play in the NFL, and that's a problem. Like it really is. You're going to have to put on 15 pounds at least.
And your number one quarterback,
Zach Wilson, 6'2", 210, got the big mitts. You go back and you look at the tape on him a little bit, and you kind of see that he's got a guy that he's got some receivers out there that got some talent, but he makes them better, and you can see it. You can see the way that he does things. He makes all the throws. Doesn't need his feet set to do it. Can do it off platform. It's adjustable throwing platforms. Fires the ball out quick. There's sizzle coming off. He's a noticeable arm strength difference. He has a stronger arm than Trevor Lawrence. He's built a little thicker too. We talk about 6'2", 210. I mean, Lawrence they're basically the same weight, except Lawrence is like 5 inches taller.
Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight. Tune in to Broncos TV every weeknight at 6:30, right here on KTVD Channel 20.